Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. All right, everybody, I'm back. Gonna be back. So I'll be honest, it's Monday night. Wasn't really planning on doing a college hoops transfer portal update, but then Monday got crazy. We just did one on Sunday night, but so much happened on Monday that I felt like we had to go ahead and do a Monday night update. By the way, as I always tell you, as you can see on the scroller below, for all your portal news and notes, make sure to follow CBB Transfers on both Twitter, and we also just started an Instagram page, so you could be what? One of the first 200 followers there. Go ahead, follow on Instagram, CBB Transfers. Tell them Torres sent you. By the way, drop what number you are, follower and subscriber. We appreciate your support there. Again, CBB Transfers on both Twitter and our brand new Instagram page. Let's go ahead and dive in, though, to the news from Monday. And listen, let me say this. We're going to start at the place that we've started a lot over the last couple weeks, and it is the University of Kentucky. And I know if you're not a Kentucky fan, you're sitting there saying, Torres, all you do is talk about Kentucky. Well, forgive me, but brand new head coach, brand new staff. By the way, we got a report right as I got set to record here tonight that Alvin Brooks III is set to join Mark Pope's staff. So we'll discuss that when it becomes official. But I bring it up to very simply say that at Kentucky, it is craziness right now as the staff comes together, but also the roster comes together. On Sunday, we got our third official member of the team, Amari Williams, center from Drexel, commits to Kentucky. But what was interesting was almost simultaneously, Matt Norlander, CBS Sports, puts out a tweet that basically insinuates, hey, Kentucky is going to have visitors basically every single day this week, and there's going to be a lot of news coming out over the next couple days. So who does Kentucky have on campus this week? Let's go ahead and break it down. First of all, Monday, we know it's official. Richie Saunders, one of Mark Pope's former players at BYU, is visiting. We saw pictures of the pickup at the airport. Mark Pope, door-to-door service from the craft center, to the facility, to the airport and back. But Richie Saunders is a player that is visiting Kentucky. Listen, I like this guy. He, to me, is a program guy. As a sophomore this year, averaged 9.5 points per game, 36% three-point shooting. I always note it was in the Big 12. If you can average basically double figures in the Big 12, shooting 36, 37% from three, guess what? You can pretty much do that anywhere. And I think what was interesting about it is if you watched BYU, he did it in just 21 minutes of play per game. And that's the kind of interesting thing about BYU that I think is relevant for Kentucky fans is the idea that they play a lot of guys. And you don't have to play 37, 38 minutes a game. And I'll say this, I'm not trying to dig at the previous coach, John Calipari. I respect him. I think he's going to do well at Arkansas. But last year, Calipari played a lot of guys, but it was because he could never figure out a rotation. Mark Pope, I think he subs in a lot of bodies. He wants a lot of shooting. He wants full max effort. And Richie Saunders, to me, is a guy that can come in. I don't know that he's going to be a starter. I don't know that he's going to be a 36-minute-a-game guy, but I don't really know how many of those guys there are going to be, period, at Kentucky under Mark Pope. And so I very simply bring it up to say that he is on campus. Obviously, he's considering a lot of different options, including a return to BYU. I know BYU has named its new head coach, and that guy is putting his staff together. But I bring it up because obviously Richie Saunders, as I'm recording here, is not done. Would be a very nice piece if Mark Pope can get him. I think what's interesting is trying to figure out what is next and who else could be visiting campus this week. I believe it is all but official. Great Osabor, the Mountain West Player of the Year, will be on campus this week. Obviously a very interesting tie. He, like Amari Williams, is from England. They played together overseas back in their home country of England. Great Osabor was, again, the Mountain West Player of the Year this year, 17 points, 9 rebounds. The only thing that concerns me about him, he doesn't really shoot the ball very well. Not a very good three-point shooter, which is okay, but I'm having trouble figuring out how him and Amari Williams fit together. Now, the good news is, doesn't really matter what I think. Mark Pope, if he does take a commitment from Great Osabor, clearly has a plan, clearly will have it figured out, and it's not up to what Torres thinks because Mark Pope is going to have a plan, and obviously we know Great Osabor and Amari Williams have played together. So that's another name to watch for Kentucky. Obviously, Koby Brea, the sharpshooter from Dayton, put out his final five. We'll get to Koby Brea in a minute because I need to talk about that man separately. Got himself a heck of a final five. We've seen some other names that could be visiting. I think Brandon Garrison, 7-footer, former McDonald's All-American, played at Oklahoma State this past year. He's a beast. He is a load, 7 foot. I think it'd be interesting if you bring him in. Does he kind of back up Amari Williams for a year and then become the starter a year from now as a potential All-SEC guy? I don't know. But those are some of the names that have come out. Also worth noting, by the way, on Sunday night show, we talked about the rumor with Johnell Davis from Florida Atlantic. I could not confirm it, but there was a report that Michigan admissions did not let him in. Now it's interesting because Michigan took a bunch of transfers this weekend, so I don't know if that report is fully accurate or not. But Johnell Davis is another player that it feels like Kentucky is in very good shape with. Averaged 18 points per game, 6.5 3-pointers, 41% shooting from three. He's a 6'4" guard, but he really plays much bigger than that. He plays at like a 6'6", 6'7" guy. I think he's got a plus wingspan. And the thing with him, too, is that Johnell Davis played some of his best games in some of the biggest moments. 35 points in that thrilling overtime win against a double overtime win against Arizona right before Christmas. 30 points against UAB, 28 points against North Texas, 29 points in a follow-up against North Texas. In the NCAA tournament, he has a great game against Northwestern with 18 points as well. So we will see what the latest is with Johnell Davis, but Kentucky obviously believes they're in good shape. So I mentioned a second ago, some conflicting stuff on Johnell Davis and if there was an issue with Michigan admissions. I bring it up to say, listen, admissions is a funny thing because certain schools have certain qualifications. Sometimes grad programs are harder to get into. Sometimes grad programs are easier to get into. Sometimes they don't want to take upperclassmen. But I bring it up because if Michigan is having issues with the admissions department, that is news to Dusty May because Dusty May has put in some work over the last couple days as the Michigan head coach. And I want to give him his flowers because I like the hire. I knew he would end up somewhere and he would be good. Would it be Louisville? Would it be Ohio State? Would it be Michigan? He chooses Michigan. And I will say this, after the work that he has done over the last 3 or 4 days, I believe Michigan is going to be a top 25 team going into the season. So on Sunday's update, we talked about a couple different things. First of all, we did talk about Trey Donaldson, the guard from Auburn committing. I actually like Trey Donaldson. That Auburn's a program. They play a lot of guys. Nobody's playing 34, 35 minutes. So Trey Donaldson in 19 minutes of play a game, averaged about 7 points, 3.5 assists, led the team in that category, 41% three-point shooting. I know it's not totally fair to extrapolate things out to 40-minute increments, but, you average about 15 points and about 7 assists per game. If you extrapolate it out to full 40 minutes, that ain't bad. Trey Donaldson is going. Danny Wolf, the center that was very highly regarded out of Yale, is headed to Michigan as well. We talked about him, 14 points, 9.5 rebounds per game, and a pretty good three-point shooter as well. What was interesting, though, was after adding those guys, after adding Reuben Jones, a transfer from North Texas, after adding Justin Pippen, a high school player who, of course, is the son of Scottie Pippen, what was interesting was my guy Dusty May did not stop putting in that work because on Monday, my guy got 2 more commitments before breakfast was even over. Talking about Wheaties is the breakfast of champions. No, getting transfer portal commits is the breakfast of champions. As on Monday morning, he got 2 more commitments. Roddy Gale, the guard from Ohio State. So yes, we have a day after Aiden Holloway goes from Auburn to Alabama. We have an Ohio State to Michigan commitment as Roddy Gale, who averaged 13.5 points for Ohio State, ends up going to Michigan. And then I really like this player as well. Sam Walters, 6'10" forward, played at Alabama on this year's Final Four team. He himself is headed to Michigan. By the way, I don't just like Sam Walters because he is a listener of the Aaron Torres pod. Sam, if you're listening, I appreciate your support. Talk to him about that at the West Regional in LA, as well as the Final Four in Phoenix. But Sam is a listener, but he's also a really good player. Lefty, 6'10", great three-point shooter. And I think he is going to be a program guy. I think he's an NBA player. Probably not next year. But I think next year he comes in. By year 3, I think he could be an all Big Ten type player, first-round pick. So I love what Dusty May has done over the last couple days. Credit to Dusty May, who has added, what did I just say, 5 transfers and 6 pieces overall since Friday afternoon. That is an incredible run. Credit to him. Let's get to a couple other news and notes. We talked about Kentucky. We talked about Michigan. I want to talk about a couple individual players. By the way, one more, I think, commit of note. Duke getting Mason Gillis, I like a lot, okay? So Mason Gillis played at Purdue. He was their 6th man this year. And listen, I think it was one of those situations where there was some, he was the 6th man. I thought he was a great soldier as a 4th-year player, kind of fell in line. I talked to him a little bit about it at the Final Four, coming off the bench. He was like, look, man, anything I can do to help the team win. Well, I bring it up because on Monday he committed to Duke. This is a big one for Duke. On Sunday's Aaron Torres pod, we talked about the fact that Duke kind of needs some veterans. Only 2 returning players, that 6-man high school recruiting class. You need some veterans to fill in around them. Well, Gillis is about a 6'8", 6'9" forward, tough as heck, shoots 3, hit 46% from 3 off the bench from Purdue. And I just think he's that nice veteran piece that you need. Kind of show those young guys the ropes in college basketball. So credit to John Shire. A couple other notes. First of all, I mentioned that I would be talking Koby Brea. Koby Brea is the transfer from Dayton who entered the portal a few days ago, and he has cut his list to 5. And when I tell you this is the most stacked Final 5 that I have ever seen, this is the most stacked Final 5 that I have ever seen. Koby Brea's Final 5 per John Rothstein is UConn. By the way, yes, I am wearing a UConn shirt. Hate me, whatever. I'm an alum. This was a gift. Forgive me, okay? Koby Brea's Final 5. UConn, Kentucky, Kansas, Duke, North Carolina. That is the most insane Final 5 that I have ever seen. You could argue probably the 5 most prominent programs in college basketball right now. The modern day blue bloods, the new blood with UConn, the best program in the sport right now. That is just an absurd Final 5. So for people who don't know Koby Brea, he was quite literally the nation's leading three-point shooter, 49.8% this season. And the crazy thing, of course, is that he did it on 200 three-point attempts. So you can hit 49%. If you only take 12 three-pointers the entire year, it looks a lot different than if you take a little over 200. And yes, I know that if you take 12 three-pointers, there's no way you can shoot 49.8%, but you get the point. Anyway, Koby Brea is down to 5, and it'll be really interesting. Kentucky, UConn, Kansas, North Carolina, and Duke. I'll be blunt. In terms of the recruitment, it feels to me like there are 2 schools. I think Kansas is a little bit of a long shot. They got dudes. They got players. They've added 3 veteran guards. Koby Brea has played 4 years of college basketball. He's got 1 year left. I think it's a tough sell to go to Kansas. I know they're still looking for shooting, but when you add 3 backcourt guys and you already have DeJuan Harris, I just find it hard to believe that that's going to be the spot. I don't think Duke is probably the spot. Again, do you want to go play with a bunch of freshmen? I don't know. Who's the point guard? Is it Tyrese Proctor? Whatever. And so to me, I guess it would be Caleb Foster. But to me, this feels like a UConn, Kentucky, and North Carolina deal. North Carolina is very actively recruiting three-point shooting. Cade Tyson, the kid from Belmont, is a kid that has had a lot of interest from North Carolina. He visited North Carolina this weekend, I believe. Also, Kentucky, listen, we talked about it. Kentucky's got visitors all week, plenty of spots, plenty of opportunities. This kid would come in and start right away, and I think he'd be really good. And, of course, UConn has Liam McNeely on campus, but right now we're trying to figure out that UConn roster. Is Alex Caravan coming back? Is he not coming back? What does it mean for Koby Brea? How many players are you going to take out of the portal? You still have a couple freshmen that are going to be sophomores next year in solo ball and Jalen Stewart. So I just bring it up to say a very interesting scenario at UConn. I think it'll come down to those final three. I don't know that there's a favorite. Feels like a UConn-Kentucky kind of battle. And then another name that's kind of interesting, Jonas Adu, who was at Tennessee this last year, kind of a back-to-the-basket center. You know, he's kind of one of those guys. He's going to play 5 feet in. He's not a stretch 5. He doesn't play, he's not a guy that's going to shoot threes, but he is really good around the rim. He is down to a Final Four. He visited Baylor this weekend, Arkansas, Alabama, and the fourth school is Carolina. Carolina, much like I mentioned a minute ago, they're looking for three-point shooting, also need another body to replace Armando Bacot. Adu is originally from North Carolina. Obviously, Arkansas is going to be in the mix. Alabama looking for big bodies as well. And it is worth noting, Baylor was the visit, and I think Baylor's probably the favorite right now. That is your latest up-to-the-minute college hoops transfer portal news. Please note, when you're watching this, stuff will have changed. Stuff could have changed. So if something's outdated here, forgive me. This stuff moves very quickly. And a quick reminder, make sure that you're following CBB Transfers on Twitter, CBB Transfers on Instagram, which we just started. We're at like 157 subscribers. Go ahead, be one of the first 200 to subscribe to that page for all of your late-breaking portal news. And also make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres